Hello and welcome to the Audacity Factor. I'm the creator and host, Kathryn Daw, and this is day 13 of my 90 for 90. It's been a bit of a challenge to commit to this daily. And not that I haven't done this in the past, I have, but maybe not in such a quantity. I think 33 days is the most I've done previously. If you've been a member of any of my challenges that I've done, in an old Facebook group. Actually, there's a couple of videos here on YouTube that you can check them out. I think it's day 20, two or three of them are on here, and you can check them out. I encourage you to. So, I always wing it when I do these videos. Oftentimes, again, I will have something sperm at the moment that comes up, or somebody that I talk with, or something that I read, something that I watch, and it will inspire me to have a conversation around that. And, I encourage you to consider doing the same thing. Not that you have to put it on YouTube or anywhere, but have an inspired conversation with a friend or a family member or your spouse or someone, coworker, and see kind of where it goes, because we can learn so much when we have these conversations. And conversations are only uncomfortable because we don't have them enough. That's really the only reason. And I think today, it's more of everything's become so taboo, or, that you're almost afraid to even bring up a conversation, or everybody puts such dire meaning to everything, as in it's not safe to have a spontaneous, open conversation about something that maybe you've been taught not to talk about, or you don't feel safe talking to a certain person. But is that just an assumption that you're making? But I encourage you to have an inspired conversation around something, and you may discover something, you may not. But again, it's a practice that we all have an opportunity to engage with. So I decided right here, I have several books here on my desk, as well as some partially done paintings. I have my card deck I created in front of me, but I'm going to pick one of these books and I'm going to open to a page, and then I'm going to read a little bit and then see what comes from that. So how does that sound? Does that sound okay? Well, even if it doesn't, I'm going to do it anyway. So the book on top here is the book, The Four Agreements. I don't know if you can see that. My camera's a little wonky. Okay, whatever. But it's The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And if you look at my copy, it's very battered. It's been read many times. My husband's read it as well. So, and I've shared this book many times. I've gifted this book many times. It was a super eye-opener for me. Just the concepts of these things, that some of the very basic things that we kind of can learn to live our lives by, usually trained into us by someone else. So I'm going to open to a page here, and I'll tell you which agreement it is, and I'll tell you a little bit about it, and then I'll read a passage, whatever passage I turn to. Uh-oh, something fell. Okay, so let's see. The agreement that they're speaking into right now is the first agreement, which is be impeccable with your word. The first agreement is the most important one, and also the most difficult one to honor. It is so important that with just this first agreement, you will be able to transcend to the level of existence I call heaven on earth. The first agreement is to be impeccable with your word. It sounds very simple, but it's very, very powerful. Why your word? Your word is the power that you have to create. It is not that anytime we want to create something, we might write it down first. Your word is the gift that comes directly from the universe or God or whatever it is you believe in. Now, the page I turned to talks about, for years we have received the gossip from the words of others, but also from the way we use our words with ourselves. Now, that's a conversation right there worth having. We talk to ourselves constantly, and most of the time we are saying things like, oh, I look fat, I look ugly, I'm getting old, I'm losing my hair, I'm stupid, I never understand anything, I will never be good enough, and I'm never going to be perfect. Do you see how we use our words against ourselves? I especially for me in my past, many of you know I was in an abusive relationship for a decade, and the litany in my head was unbelievable, filled with fear, with anger, with resentment, with shame, with judgment. A lot of it against myself, but then a lot of it against that person as well. And until when I finally recognized, and I would think to myself, my God, if he could hear what I'm saying in my head, his hair would probably catch on fire. But, when I finally recognized that not only was I doing that against him, but I was doing it against myself as well. So, and I know this is something we talk about, but it can't be stated enough. We don't only abuse others with our words, accusations, blame, assumptions, expectations, did I say accusations? Because that's such a big one right there, is we accuse people where we are taught now to react instead of to consider and then possibly respond. And, actually that we have a tendency not to be generous anymore. We're not generous with others, whether it's their behavior. And I know that can be a trying point. We can give someone the benefit of the doubt over and over again, and they don't ever seem to be able to get beyond whatever that behavior is, whether it's bullying, abusive in some way, fear-filled, negative, just undermining, and it can be difficult then to continue to want to be generous with that person. And, you know, and when it comes to ourselves, we can do that even more so. We can say we're going to commit to a new exercise regimen, let's say, for example, and 3 days go by, or, maybe you make it a week, or maybe you make it 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden you start to taper off. And then you go ahead. First of all, we all make the excuses come, but with those excuses up here, you're judging yourself as well. Now you're not admitting to that out loud, but now we all know what's going on up in there, up in our heads. The conversation is way different here than the one that's coming out here. And when we do use our words, and it's our thoughts at this point, but our thoughts are formed in words. So we use that against ourselves. That just leads us further into shame, judgment, and into undermining behavior and undermining thought processes. Again, many of you know, I believe in the power of the two things. We're either going to speak to support, in support of ourselves, or we're going to speak to undermine ourselves. Our thoughts are either going to support us or undermine us. Our behavior is either going to empower us or disempower us. So it's really just those two things. And your words are really used in just those two ways. You're going to be generous with someone, you're going to be generous with yourself, or you're going to be undermining or judgmental or shaming with yourself and or others as well. So it's really a conversation worth having. Using our words to build, to create, not to undermine, not to destroy. Now, there are some things like our walls that we build around ourselves that do need to come down, but all those walls are built of our judgments, our shames, our traumas, our fears. That's what those walls are built from, to feeling like we need to protect ourselves. And particularly, that's usually from others. But we can also make that attempt to protect ourselves from ourselves, which until we can change our thoughts and until we can change where our thoughts come from, what the energy is that builds and creates our thoughts, what behavior that leads to, beliefs, beliefs stem from that very place, and we behave according to what we believe. So isn't it interesting, just from that, being impeccable with your word, be impeccable with your word to yourself today, to others. Be generous with your thoughts. Be generous with your words in regard to others and yourselves. And yes, I know absolutely that that can be trying at times with particular people, with particular behavior. It's really in regard typically to behaviors or words that maybe are thrown at you. And it can be difficult to recognize that that's that other person's dynamic that's going on up here and what they're feeling. We can say that the saying goes that hurt people hurt people. What it actually is hurting people that are hurting hurt others. And until they can address their own hurting, they will continue to hurt others. And we can try to support them or guide them, but oftentimes until someone asks for it and actually implements whatever support or suggestions or advice that you give, it's on them. The behavior doesn't change until they want it to change. And that's another belief of mine. When you are done with it, it is done with you. So until you are done with your trauma will continue to have its way with you. And so much of that is based in our words. So today, I encourage you to be impeccable with your word towards yourself and towards others. Think of kindness, generosity. And if there's somebody that you just cannot do that with, then don't put yourself in a position where you have to test that. But I encourage you to practice it so that you can create a scenario where you can be around them without being triggered, where you can be generous with even that person, knowing that their behavior, their words don't actually mean anything about you. It only means something about them. So anyway, day 13, the Audacity Factor. Please join me on Patreon. I am going to have our Unbook Club where I'm going to do some videos and I'm going to choose a book. I'm going to do some videos. If you're at one of the paid levels, you'll get a live Q&A. But I encourage you to join at the free level because I'm providing some other content there that I would love for you to take advantage of. I will see you all tomorrow in video number 14.